Namaste. Welcome to the new session. Uh, the last time I said that we would be proceeding towards uh, our process, educative process towards pranayama. Because if you recall, during the delineation of meditation, I said I won't be telling you about the third kind of meditation which Patanjali mentioned, which is the yogic process of meditation, meditation in yoga, and then which later becomes the seventh limb of Patanjali's Ashtanga system. It is because, as I said, I neither qualify to divulge that simply because of the fact that the yogic process of meditation is directly linked and connected to pranayama. The pranayama is the gateway for that meditation, that dhyana rather, precisely. Because sutra on pranayama mentions that pranayama is the gateway, dharana sucha yogyataha manasaha. That means pranayama makes the mind suitable, qualified, compatible for dharana, dhyana, samadhi process. And therefore, unless we delineate on pranayama, unless we do something, we get to know some information, knowledge, formal knowledge about pranayama, we don't really qualify to go to dhyana of the third kind. And therefore, I postponed any delineation on the third type of pranayama which Patanjali has mentioned. Now, in order that we qualify, I have now decided to tell you something about pranayama. And of course, this is in an educative process. It is not the way it is taught these days, because today yoga has become a consumer product, consumer subject, and therefore one will not be familiar with this formal process of education. These days we tend to draw a hard line between asana and pranayama. We say that this is asana and this is pranayama. Now, since yoga is integral process, the whole process of Ashtanga is integral process. We have not understood how it is integral. How asana is connected to pranayama and pranayama connected to asana. As a matter of fact, all the 8 limbs are mutually connected. It has to be an integral process. And so much so that today we say that even people are used to making an expression, I do yoga and I do meditation. As if yoga should not be meditative. And yoga, pranayama and meditation have become 3 practices because yoga is deemed to be merely postural practices in modern times. So this needs to be overcome. We need to overcome such a kind of notion, idea, impression. Calling or equating yoga with postural practices, yoga, pranayama and meditation. Yoga itself should be a meditative process. There has to be meditative process, meditative facet, meditative aspect in even asanas, if they are yoga asanas. So, therefore, asanas are taught in a particular framework, and then there is another framework for pranayama. This is how we are used to these days to imparting yoga. Asana has a framework and it is taught within that frame, and then there is a separate frame from pranayam, and pranayam is taught in that frame. So we tend to separate, disintegrate the two from each other rather than going for an integral process. So technically asanas are taught, and that is called as teaching asana, and then pranayam is taught, that is called as teaching pranayam. We are losing the link. Because when Patanjali defines pranayam, he relates it directly with asanas. The first sutra on pranayam, he says, Tasmin sati shwasa prachwasa gati vichedaha pranayamaha. So asanas have been mentioned, asanas have been defined, sthira sukumasanam, and then prayatna shaithilya ananta samapatti as the effect of asana, tato dandvana vigataha as an effect of pranayam. And thereafter, he says, thereafter when the breath is handled, regulated, it becomes pranayam. Tasmin sati means thereafter. Whereafter? When Dvandva anabhighat condition has been attained through asanas. So asanas are, in classical approach, are not meant for physical fitness, physical addressal, physical consideration, corporeal addressal, corporeal consideration, but we are supposed to attain a state which is Dvandva anabhighat condition. By asanas, we must, like cream appears on the surface of milk. Similarly, Dvandva anubhighat condition have to appear on asanas through asanas. So that is the effect of asanas. And thereafter, when the breath is regulated, tasmin sati shwasa prachwasa gati vichedaha. When thereafter the in-breath and out-breath are modified in their dimensions of volume, velocity, density, flow, then it becomes pranayam. So for pranayam, you just can't be breathing through right nostril or left nostril or do some bhastrika or do some ujjayi. Basically, the mind must be in a dvandva anubhighat condition. That's a prerequisite if you adhere to classical approach. You can't just sit in a place and start doing pranayam. One of the pranayams, such as today we are familiar with Ujjayi pranayam, Surya Bhedan, Chandra Bhedan, Nadi Shodhan pranayam, or Anulom Pratilom pranayam, Bhastrika pranayam. So we just embark upon pranayam in given state of the mind. This is not done in classical approach. So let's try to have formal understanding here. The pranayam should be only launched after mind is in a equity, equanimity, equilibrium. Then in that state we have a kind of corresponding breath. And that breath has to be regulated. When the mind is spasmodic, sporadic, when the mind is mercurial, mind is wandering, mind is rambling, mind is distracted, mind is fragmented, mind is indented, there is an indentation to the mind. Now when the mind has such indentation, then if you do something with the breath, it is not pranayam in classical approach. So therefore it implies that the mind you must have a particular state of mind to embark upon pranayam. And that has to be attained through asanas. That state of mind has to be attained through asana. Any asana or asanas, first of the mind should be steadied. You can steady the mind in various ways. If the mind is unsteady, you can steady the mind in so many different ways. Get onto the top of the terrace, watch the sky, look at the sky, or have some kind of input to the mind where the mind will be steadied. So it's not that the mind should be steadied by any means and measures, because there are so many measures and means to steady the mind. If you carry out a field work as to how do you steady your disquiet mind, How do you steady your rambling mind? You apply means and measures, so the mind is steadied. So it's not steadying the mind by hook or crook or by any means and measures. It is only through asana. Mind steadied through the asana, not mind steadied through a tranquilizer. Because tranquilizers also can steady the mind. So it's steadying the mind through asanic process. This is the classical approach. Patanjali clearly, explicitly mentions it. Dvandva anubhighat condition has to come through an asanic endeavor and through asanic medium. And then that breath has to be regulated, because as we understand, pranayama is regulating the breath. So let's try to understand formally, because usually we are used to take up yoga as and how it is convenient to us. This is convenient, I will do this way. This is not so convenient, I will not go that way. But that is not the formal approach. That is not the process in classical yoga. Whatever suits, I will do that. Then it's a consumerism. First of all, if we are trying to tread on the path of yoga, we have to understand that we can't be in consumerism and likes and dislikes, conveniency and inconveniency. We cannot be looking for our conveniency. That's the formal approach. So, through the asana, the mind has to be steadied first. And therefore understand how asanas are prerequisites for pranayama. Some of you have this idea that one must perfect the asanas and then must go for pranayama. There is nothing like perfection of an asana. When the asana reaps the fruit mentioned in the text, that itself is an asana. It is not by somebody's assessment that your asana is perfect, or by your own assessment that asana is perfect or imperfect. It must yield that fruit that the mind is capable of getting absorbed in infinitude, ananta swamapattibhyam. Or when the mind is so steadied, that is the state of mind that one must reach in asanas classically. Again, I tell you, this is an educative process. Don't look for what is possible to me and what is not possible to me. And I will only attempt what is possible, and I will not venture to do anything that is not seeming to be possible or seems to be impossible. This is consumerism. This is practical view of life, practicality of life. In practical life, you can look for that. What is possible, what is not possible, what is good and what is not good for me, what is convenient, what is inconvenient. So that is consumerism, which is rampant in yoga. Therefore, we will be finding this difficult to understand and conceive. Anyway, so when the mind is so steadied, then when you start working on the breath, start working on the dimensions of breath, modifying the dimensions of the breath, volume, velocity, density, confinement, deployment, function, purpose, etc., then it becomes pranayama. This is again called pranayama, not shvasayam. Now today, because the popular version of yoga has been catering shvasayam. Watch your breath, and then make your breath slow, make your breath deep, etc., etc. So we are dealing with our respiratory breath. So for common man, breath awareness means the awareness of the breath which is moving through the nostrils. But if you have sufficient education in yoga, you will understand it is not just you are not supposed to be aware of the breath which is moving through the nostril, in breath for oxygenation and out breath for decarbon exhalation. The breath has enormous potentials to work within. So we must first identify the purpose and function of the breath, which is extra respiratory. So uh, in short, I can say that pranayam is not regulating the respiratory breath. Pranayam is not conditioning, regulating, controlling respiratory breath. The breath has so many functions within our embodiment. Common man thinks the breathing is there for us to live, because if we breathe, we live. And the breathing is there for little more educated people who are little educated in biology, anatomy, physiology. So they know that if the breathing is going on, autonomous system will be going on. If the autonomous system has failed, then you are at the threshold of the death. So we think the breath is for autonomous system to function, and the breath is for us to live. But yoga has a different perspective here. The breathing is not merely for us to live, and the breathing is not merely for the autonomous system to function, so that the brain will be functioning, lungs will be functioning, heart will be functioning. So those are our autonomous functions, where we don't interfere, we don't do that, we don't operate the switches for blood circulation all over the body. There are no switches to switch off and switch on the blood circulation, switch off and switch on the nervous system. We never switch off the nervous system. It is working incessantly. The heart, we don't have a switch for heart to work and heart not to work. So we have no regulation, no control over certain organs of the body, certain processes of the body. That's called autonomous system. That's why it is autonomous. So when the breath is on, breathing is on, autonomous system will be there. You can't imagine that autonomous system functioning with breathing having a seizure. No breathing at all taking place, but autonomous system functioning. It won't function too long. It would be just functioning for a couple of moments. So only when the breathing is going on, then autonomous system will function. Actually, it is breathonomous. More than calling it autonomous, it is breathonomous. It is dependent on the breathing process. Anyway, such notion is not there in body science or anatomy physiology. They call it autonomous, because they will say only autonomous system functions, that the breathing will take place. Again, there is mutual dependency. If the autonomous system has been stopped, your breathing will stop. If the breathing is stopped, your autonomous system will stop. So there is such a relationship between the two. So the point is, as students of yoga, we have to understand this extra respiratory function, act, purpose, efficacy of breathing. Layman will have no idea about it, as to how the breathing has extra respiratory functions. It has potentials, enormous potentials, to work in extra respiratory realm. Now this needs to be identified. What breathing does within us has to be explored, rather than having just an impression that the breathing makes the lungs function, and when the lungs are functioning, there will be oxygenation taking place of the cells, the corpuscular particles, and the cells of the body, so that animation will continue. So we have a concept of blood circulation. See, understand, when we take an inhalation, we take oxygen. Now, how is the oxygen supplied all over the body? Oxygen is not just supposed to go in the lungs. The oxygen needs to go all over the body for all the cells. And that takes place via media of the blood. There is oxygen content getting into the blood. And then that blood circulates all over the body. And therefore, oxygen is carried out all over the body and brain by our circulatory system. The oxygen gets into blood, and that blood is All that oxygen through the blood is supplied to all the cells. If any part of the body doesn't get oxygen, it is called anoxia. So when oxygen doesn't go there, then that part suffers. It is impaired. And then it also becomes dead. That part will become dead in the body. Although you are not dead, that part will become dead. So oxygen needs to be going everywhere. And there is circulatory system which is about 60,000 miles odd in our body, and the oxygen supply takes place that way. But common man has no idea of something that can be called as breath circulation. He thinks the breath circulation is only confined to respiratory system, the nasal passages, the air passage, the windpipe, and the bronchia, and the lungs. And we think that's only the region where the breath is circulated. But yoga identifies its enormous potentials as to what the breath can do. So this has to be explored through the process of yoga, asanas, that is. See, in asanas, we must dedicate some part of our asanic practices to understand the breath usages, breath applications, breath addressals, the breath as a benefactor, breath as beneficiary. In physical culture, we just see that the body is a beneficiary and we give benefits to body, or maybe to some extent benefits to mind, because after you exercise you feel fresh. If you optimally exercise, you feel fresh. If you overtly exercise, you get tired, fatigued. But exercise can refresh your mind. It can overcome the dullness of the mind, and the mind will be animated because of exercises optimally done. So the mind is also beneficiary, body is beneficiary. But we have to see how the breath can be a beneficiary through asanas. In various asanas. So for example, now all of you settle down to Supta Virasana. And now find out in Supta Virasana, how do you breathe? In your chest part, in your diaphragmatic part, in your abdominal part. When you start slightly customize your breath or slightly condition your breath, little deeper, little hypernormal in volume, more and more of inhalation, more and more of exhalation, in normal velocity, find out how it will address the body matter. Similarly, the exhalation. So in Supta Virasana, find out how the chest part is breathing, how the chest part is breathed, how the diaphragm is breathing, how the diaphragm is breathed, how the abdominal pelvic region is breathed and breathing. So in the anterior, you can feel that the breath is playing a very important role. The postural dynamics can even address the breath. The body matter, abdominal muscles, abdominal skin, abdominal tissues, the chest tissues, they can work for the breath, they can work by the breath. Now this needs to be identified, how the body matter, soft tissues and hard tissues, because we have body matter made up of only two matters. There is hard tissue matter and there is soft tissue matter. So how the breath works for hard tissue matter, that is the bones, how the breath works for soft tissue matter, which is skin, muscles, flesh. So when you deepen your inhalation, you can see that it is making the soft tissues and hard tissues beneficiaries. And since their activity is changed, they can also be benefactors to breath. They will contribute, opening of the skin, opening of the muscles, opening of the tissues, opening of the ribs, opening of the intercostal muscles, opening of the pulmonary layers, in the chest part, in the abdominal part. So the breath is also a beneficiary, and we have to see that we exalt that condition, that in asanas you don't only give benefit to body matter, but also you give benefit to breath matter, breath processes. Now this was Supta Virasana. Now I will radically change this position. From Supta Virasana, please get up and go to Adhomukha Virasana. That is bending forward. You might spread your knees and take your head down, take your trunk down, extend your arms over the head. Now see how much the breath is working for the back, on the back, in the back. How much the back is working for the breath and breathing. In Supta Virasana, it did not work. Back did not work so much. Breath did not work for back so much. Back did not work for breath so much. Now find out how the back can work significantly for breath and breathing. Deepen the breath, customize the breath, hypernormal volume, velocity, similarly modify from normal to hypo and normal to hyper. So deeper breath both in a normal velocity pattern, deeper breath in hypo-normal velocity pattern, and deeper breath with hyper-normal velocity pattern. So the interactions will change. So the body, mind, breath are mutual benefactors, beneficiaries, which I emphasized in an asanic delineation on asanas. That the body, mind, breath are mutually benefactors, beneficiaries of each other. Now here you can see how they are mutual beneficiary of each other in breath and breath's perspective. Usually in asanas we have body perspective. We rarely have breath perspective. But in classical approach, you are supposed to have some percentage, 10, 20, 30% for breath set. What is called as breath set, addressal breath considerate condition. If you recall, all this was mentioned to you during our asanic sessions or our delineation on asanas. Now, how the breathing is different between Adhomukha Virasana, that is bending forward, and Supta Virasana, bending backwards and lying backwards. Now, if you sit in Virasana, upright position, it will be different interaction. Again, now sit for a while in Virasana, upright position. So this is the third position that you can take in Virasana. One is supine, the other one is bending forward, and now the third one is sitting upright, straight. Now find out how the pelvic, abdominal, diaphragmatic, thoracic regions will differently participate, will be involved. So these are three asanas that we tried: Supta Virasana, Adhomukha Virasana, or it's also called Shashankasana, and now Virasana. So in these three positions, you will see how the breathing process changes. So we must devote and dedicate or allocate some 20-25% of our approach towards reading the breath, breathing processes, breath's contributions, breath participations, breath partakings, breath's involvements, breath as benefactor, breath as beneficiary. So we have to carry out some, if I may say so, breathatic studies. Breathatic studies in the realm of the breath in asanas. So that will tell us that the breath can do a lot for our organic body. Now once again go to Supta Virasana. Now in Supta Virasana, see how much you can work on your abdominal organs. Exhale, little sharper and deeper. What can be called as agricultural act of plowing. See, with exhalation, can you plow your abdomen? Can you carry out some operation? Like, surgical interventions in abdomen. So there are surgeries on abdomen. Find out with the exhalation, can you, with the strokes of exhalation, divide your exhalation and deflate your abdomen. So find out you can carry out certain operations. Your exhalation can carry out certain operations on abdominal muscles and even liver, stomach, colon, gallbladder to urinary bladder. Exhale more and more and more. Do the act of scraping, combing, plowing In Supta Virasana, see how much you can work for abdominal organs. And when you work with those mannerisms, though they will contribute for the breath, your breathing will be beneficiary of your strokes on the abdominal location. That is called Uddiyana Mudra, Uddiyana Kriya and Uddiyana Mudra. So one of the basic lesson to be qualifying for pranayam is in all the various asanas, all the possible probable asanas, wherever possible, wherever allowed and possible, try to go for Uddiyana Mudra. Exhale profoundly, exhale unusual volume of exhalation in various asanas, in all asanas, without exception, you can exhale more and more and more and more and more and more. Maybe if you feel that you have exhaled completely, slightly inhale nominally and exhale further and further and further. So this is a very important exercise to be carried out to get prepared for pranayam, that is exhaling more and more and more and more and more in every asana, be that standing position, be that forward bending position, be that backward bending position, be that lateral bending position, be that lateral rotation position, be that inverted position, supine position, prone position, whatever position, in all asanas, make it a point to exhale more and more and more. This will be certainly not respiratory physiological breathing. It will work for every organ of body, every organ of mind. In brain confinement in every asana, exhale more and more and more and more and more. You will exhale in cerebral parts. You will exhale in the cerebral cortical parts. You will exhale in the lobes of the brain. You will exhale even in the senses. Exhale more and more and more in the eyes. This is a unique opportunity which is possible, which can be attained in asanic technology. You can exhale more and more and more in the nose itself. Why only use the nose to exhale? Why not exhale for the nose? So understand this, exhaling by the nostrils. Exhaling by the nostrils and by the nose and through the nose. And exhaling through the nostrils. Exhaling on the nostrils. Exhaling for the nostrils. So exhaling for the nose parts, exhaling for the mouth parts, exhaling for the eye parts, exhaling for the ear parts. So when you exhale more and more and more and more, you will identify there is an enormous network, breathing network, like there are blood vessels. You will identify something that can be called as breath vessels. That means those vessels contain the breath. So in the eye parts, in the nose part, in the mouth part, in the ear part, in the brain part, in the frontal brain, in the frontal lobe, in the parietal lobe, in the occipital lobe, in the temporal lobe, sides of the face, the back of the head, front of the face, throat. You can exhale in the throat, you can exhale in the chest, you can exhale for the throat, you can exhale for the chest. So you must be aware of these semantics. Exhaling in the throat, for the throat, by the throat, of the throat. Exhaling in the chest, for the chest, by the chest, with the chest, on the chest, in the chest. Exhaling in the abdomen, for the abdomen, on the abdomen, in the abdomen, with the abdomen. So also pelvic region. And various parts of the body. Exhale more and more and more in different asanas. I just gave you an example of mutually in opposite or counter positions, Supta Virasana and Shashankasana or Adhomukha Virasana. One bending backwards, other one bending forward. So in all various asanas, there are not only different postures, you will see that there are different configurations of the breath and breathing. So try to explore this, carry out this field work. Trikonasana, etc. Trikonasana, Parshakonasana, Virabhadrasana, Ardhachandrasana, etc. All the standing poses. Padangusthasana. Everywhere there are different configurations of the breath. It's not just change in posture. For an onlooker, there is a big difference between Trikonasana and Parshakonasana as a posture. They will say there is a big difference. This is one pose, that is another pose. But layman will never, it will never occur or dawn on him that the breathing is different. Your breath will be different in every asana. So let's try to open out all these breath passages which are not used in our common man's walk of life. We have very limited movements in life, in business activity. But in asanas, you can see the whole range of asanas. Look at from the first asana in Light on Yoga to the 605th photograph, the 200th asana. So we only see difference in postures if you look at the photographs. But if you do and have this approach, let me see how the breathing is different. Imagine Tadasana. Now do all of you Tadasana. Get into Tadasana. This is an upright position. And don't just see how this posture is done, how the body is positioned. Yes, that has to be positioned, that has to be given importance, but take a step beyond it. How do you breathe in Tadasana? In how many ways can you breathe in Tadasana? How many confinements of the breath can be available? How many configurations of breathing is available in Tadasana? Tadasana can be pelvic breathing, navel breathing, abdominal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, thoracic breathing, dorsal back breathing, head, brain breathing, face breathing. So there are so many configurations of breathing in Tadasana. So inscriptive breath and little hypernormal breath is so important for you to carry out this field work. Now immediately go to Shirshasana, which is inversion. Now you are standing on your head. Now when you stand on your head, as against standing on the feet in Tadasana, we just see that it is an inversion. We call it inversion. Because you were upright then and now you are inverted here. So therefore Shirshasana gets called as inversion. But do you notice how much the breath has changed? How much the breathing has changed? The breathing of the pelvic region, abdominal region, diaphragmatic region, thoracic region, facial region, back region, pelvic, perineum, hip region. So different configurations of breath. So this will open out the entire network of breathing passages. Medical science has not admeasured these breathing passages and they can't do it because there are no really vessels for breath. However, the breath flows in so many ways. So this study of breath circulatory system will be exalted by doing so many asanas. Compare between Uttana Padma Mayurasana. What is that? Going to Sarvangasana, putting the legs into cross legs, and then taking the legs back and more towards Setuban position of the legs. Here, Setuban position of the knees. You are going backwards. So that is called Uttana Padma Mayurasana. See how it will be working, how the breath is circulating, how the exalted inhalation, exalted inhalation, inscriptive inhalation, inscriptive exhalation works. Little sharper inhalation, little sharper exhalation works. Now I will say, come to straight position. See how much the breathing has changed. This is Urdhva Padmasana in Sarvangasana. So Urdhva Padmasana in Sarvangasana, how is the breathing? Now go to Pindasana. What happened? You are flexing forward, abdominal contraction, anterior body contraction, while in Uttana Padma Mayurasana, anterior extension, posterior contraction. Now here, anterior contraction and posterior extension. The breathing will be totally different. Configurations of the breathing will be different. Breathing process will be different. Exhaling more and more in Pindasana, it's one proposal, and diametrically opposite proposal, exhaling more and more in Uttana Padma Mayurasana. The breath in the head region will be different between Pindasana and Uttana Padma Mayurasana. The breath in the chest region will be different between Pindasana and Uttana Padma Mayurasana. The breathing in the diaphragm will be different between Pindasana and Uttana Padma Mayurasana. The breathing in the abdominal, navel, pelvic region will be different between Pindasana and Uttana Padma Mayurasana. So in various asanas, you are not only moving the body in different ways, which is the common man's view, that therefore even pragmatism says, medical pragmatism, by yoga you will make your body flexible. Why don't you explore how the breathing becomes flexible by doing so many asanas, by doing all those various kinds of asanas? Why only say that the body becomes flexible by movements of yogasanas? Because you see that we move the limbs in unusual degrees. The joints are mobilized to unusual extent. The body is also moved in various ways, various postural positions, bending forward, bending backward, bending laterally, rotation, contractions, extensions, various kinds of movements take place, and we say the body will be overhauled by asanas. And then they say circulatory system also will function better because of the body movements. But nobody takes cognizance of something, that the breath flexibility is breathing system, breathing passages, breathing carriers. They also get the flexibility by so many asanas. So the breath circulatory system, which is only conceived in asana, yoga, in yoga, not in body sciences. They have not conceived that idea, notion, concept of breathing circulation. But see the breathing circulation. So it's not just body movement by forward bends and backward bends and lateral bends and etc., lateral rotations, inversions. Breathing circulation. And this is so important to develop the breathing circulation to qualify for pranayama. So see that you make it a point to at least dedicate, devote, allocate some percentage. To start with, it will be a meager percentage of 5-10%. But when you explore more and more about it, you will think of allocating more and more, and will carry out breath studies rather than merely body studies, how the body bends, biomechanics of body, body movements, body actions, body activities. Why not breath? Now this is an important kind of initiation, point of initiation to be qualifying to go for pranayama. So in various asanas, carry out breath studies. And how, like in asanas, you go for more intensity of the posture. Here in the realm of the breath, you can go for more intensity of the breath itself. The breath needs to be worked in both the realms. One is velocity, hyponormal, reaching its polarity, and then hypernormal, reaching its polarity. Then Uddiyana Kriya, Uddiyanic processes. Again, just to give a little clue, what are the abdominal processes of breathing in, say, Shashankasana or Adho Mukha Virasana? When you are bending forward, abdomen is contracted. Exhale more and more and more in the pelvic region. See what happens. It is rolled inwards more and more. It is further contracted by your exhale, while you exhale more and more. The Uddiyana Kriya of Shashankasana or Adho Mukha Virasana. Now go to Supta Virasana and go for Uddiyana Kriya of in the abdominal pelvic region. See significant difference, substantial difference between Uddiyana of Adho Mukha Virasana and Uddiyana of Supta Virasana. So this is a fascinating approach. So have this fascinating approach. Start working in the realm of the breath. How the mind works for breath, how the body works for breath in an asana. These are associated conditions. Even the mind will contribute differently. We just took example of body matter contributing for your breath and breathing, exhaling more and more and more, exhaling with Uddiyanic mannerisms. But the mind is also contributing. because you are all doing it consciously, you are not doing unconsciously. So the mind is also differently participating, mind will contribute. This contribution is so important, the mind should be familiar to contribute for the breath. We are used to mind contributing for body. We are used to mind contributing for senses. You want some pleasures. Pleasures are almost sensory pleasures. So we know how the mind can contribute for our pleasures, which are Vaishik Sukha, which I referred to last time. Because most of our pleasures are sensory pleasures. All the senses benumbed, we hardly have any pleasure channel available. Imagine that. If all the senses are benumbed, if deactivated, all the senses deactivated, what is the scope and chance for you to get pleasure? Tell me. No, nil. So we know how the mind works for the senses, how the mind works for body. But as students of yoga try to carry out a formal study, how the mind works for body, how the mind works for senses, and more importantly, how the mind works for breath. The relationship with the breath and mind has been established in science of yoga, Yoga Shastra. But today, we are little aware as the mind is little disturbed. Do take few deep breaths. Any Tom, Dick and Harry can give this advice. Now let's change this Tom, Dick, Harry's advices. We can take the advices. Take few deep breaths. As students of yoga, do few deeper exhalations and do few slower breaths. See how it will work on the mind. Common man has no idea of this. So common man will say only take few deep breaths. But you can also take slow breaths. Make your breath slower and slower, as long as there is a positive reap. Go on, find out, can you get positive reaps by slowing down the breath, deepening the exhalation, deepening the slower inhalation, rather than sniffing inhalations. Common man, if you say ask him to inhale deep, he will do sniffing inhalation. That's how he will do. See the amount of greed there. See the possessiveness, grabbing nature. That's almost stealing the breath. If you sniff your inhalation, it is almost stealing the inhalation, it is grabbing the inhalation. It is not really taking the inhalation. So common man will be doing that. A deeper breath means sniffing inhalation. He will sniff the inhalation. He doesn't take the inhalation. So understand this. And in asanic processes, often in all possible asanas, completely exhale more and more and go for Uddiyana Kriya. This is so important to qualify for pranayam. Because in classical pranayam, no pranayam is without Uddiyanic mannerisms. It is almost implied that all pranayamic breathing, there must be Uddiyanic mannerisms in your breath and breathing. Now, in order to qualify for that, in all asanas, go for Uddiyana Kriya. Go for even Uddiyana Mudra. Even often, as many times as possible, go for a post-exhalative retention. This will prepare the system for pranayam. Uddiyana Kriya, Uddiyana Mudra is so important for practitioners of yoga. So even when you are exhaling more and more and more, you can be even traveling on a coach or in an airplane, make it a habit to exhale more and more and more and more. It will be so important, because otherwise long journeys these days, because we are undertaking long distance journeys and there are long journeys, so the sluggishness sets in. So exhale more and more and more, see how your abdomen will contract. It must contract. It will contract. You have to also mindfully, deliberately contract. Contract more and more and more. So even if you are in long journeys, you will not develop sluggishness in your peristaltic movements. The digestive system. Otherwise, it goes sluggish because of long journeys. And usually, in long journeys, we keep on munching. Pastime. It's a pastime. To be munching is a pastime in long journeys. So, we are putting more load on the belly. It's not that we eat because we are hungry. It's not that we eat because we need. We eat for time pass. In long journeys, it happens. So go on contracting the abdomen. So that will work wonders. Anyway, so this habit must be developed. In all asanas, make it a habit to start with. Later it must become a reflex action that you will exhale more and more and more and more and more and more in various confinements, in various locations, in various movements of your body, various negotiations of asanas. Exhale more and more and also go for a retention. Uddiyana Mudra. So this is so important to really go for a classical kind of daily practice of pranayama. In consumer process, nobody will give you this instruction. Learn first Uddiyana Mudra. Learn to exhale more and more. Only in pranayama they will say sit or lie down and exhale more and more. That's all. But in various asanas, you get various configurations of breathing, and that is so important. So I think with that, we should end this lesson today. And let me tell you that this will lead towards, for us to understand the pratyahar aspects later, and then the yogic process of dhyana. Let me not call it meditation. It is yogic process of dhyana. The breath is so important in dhyana process in yoga. Breath is so important in japa process of yoga. Japa is not just mental repetition or oral repetition. It must be incorporation of the breath and speech, breath and mind, breath and speech for a yogic process of japa. So this will be slowly opened out. And of course, japa means a major highway for embarking on dhyana. It is rare that you will embark upon dhyana without japa. So therefore, japa is so important in yogic dhyana. And let's see how the breath will make it very resourceful. The japa will become more and more resourceful, so that it has potentials to culminate into dhyana. Anyway, that is for the sessions which follow. So enough for the time being. Namaskar.